Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to speak to you today and share Tuvalu's experience strengthening culture and values, especially in the face of the dire threats posed by climate change and sea level rise. As you may know, Tuvalu is a low-lying atoll nation located in the Central Pacific. It is the third smallest independent country in the world, comprising 9 widely separated inhabited islands and a population of around 12,000, half of which lives on the main island of Funafuti. Tuvalu also possesses a unique cultural heritage centered on community and communal action. I am a staunch advocate for the importance of Tuvaluan culture and values to all aspects of modern Tuvaluan life. In my role as Minister for Justice, Communications and Foreign Affairs for the Government of Tuvalu, I have ensured that culture is reflected in our 2020 foreign policy, our forthcoming ICT policy, and even in the ongoing review of Tuvalu's constitution. Tuvaluan values of communal living systems, or olanga whakawhenua, shared responsibilities, or kaitasi, and being a good neighbor, or falepili, are critical to Tuvaluan ways of life and the consensus culture that has guided our nation for centuries. But these values are not only critical to Tuvalu, they are also critical to our global community. In today's increasingly interconnected world, it is my strong belief that Tuvaluan culture and values can enhance our global relationships. A Tuvaluan values-based approach to international relations emphasizes the global well-being of present and future generations and the responsibility of individual states to achieve this well-being. However, our Tuvaluan culture is increasingly threatened by the impacts of climate change. As sea levels rise around our island home, scientists predict that our low-lying land territory could be completely submerged before the next century. What would happen to our Tuvaluan culture and values then? Are we expected to watch them disappear along with our land? Of course, my answer is a resounding no, and my government has adopted a values-based approach to fight the very impacts of climate change threatening our cultural heritage. Last year, Tuvalu launched the Future Now project. The project now includes 4 initiatives to combat the effects of climate change that seek to both preserve our Tuvaluan culture and utilize our unique cultural values to stop climate change in its tracks. The first initiative under the Future Now project promotes the ethical and moral principles reflected in Tuvaluan cultural values, so that these values will influence other nations and peoples. Utilizing values-based diplomacy, we motivate others to recognize Tuvalu's communal way of living and understand the shared responsibilities of all countries to address international issues like climate change and sea level rise to achieve global well-being. Under the second and third initiatives in the project, we strive to maintain our maritime boundaries and statehood as permanent, even if Tuvalu's land territory is submerged due to sea level rise. We also look to create a digital nation that can preserve our government administrative systems, our state, and our cultural heritage in the digital space. I believe what is innovative about our approach in initiatives 1 to 3 is that we are not only working to preserve our culture and heritage, given the severe threats posed by sea level rise to Tuvalu, but we also see that culture and heritage have real values as tools to combat climate change. We see our culture not merely as something that is threatened by rising seas, but as something that can persuade other countries to reduce their contribution to sea level rise. The final and newest initiative under the Future Now project is initiative number 4, which outlines our efforts to undertake a more strategic, consistent and coordinated approach toward advocacy on climate change and sea level rise, both in Tuvalu and throughout the Blue Pacific region. To make a real difference in the fight against climate change, we must work together as a nation and as a Pacific region to advocate for our unique cultural values and ways of life. We have to be tireless and push for our voices to be heard at venues like this one to ensure that our nations, our lands, and our cultures survive the climate threat. Tuvalu is preparing today to secure our future tomorrow, and we're using our culture to do this. Our culture motivates us to care about and fight for the global well-being, and it reminds us that all citizens of this earth must do the same for Tuvalu and all Pacific Island nations and small island developing states. Our culture teaches us that we have a shared responsibility to care for and protect others, and we hope it can teach leaders and citizens from throughout the world that they too have a shared responsibility to stop the effects of climate change before we all feel its devastating impacts. Although I'm only present here virtually today, I would like to strongly commend the organizers for hosting this meeting. I urge all participants to take advantage of this opportunity to dialogue and wish you all the best in your deliberations over the next 5 days. Faftailasi Tuvalu Moteatua.